involving rapper Young Thug and the alleged YSL street gang continues. Young Thug and 27 others were originally indicted in May of 2022 in a sweeping RICO case that roughly 18 months later is now down to 6 defendants in all. Surrounded by controversy, the trial is now on day 96, and most recently, the defense filed to have Fulton County Superior Court Judge Glanville removed from the massive RICO trial over alleged misconduct. Joining me live now from Fox 5 Atlanta is streaming host Ariyl Onstott, who's been following this case pretty closely. Hey, Ariyl.
Hey, Bre, how are you doing this afternoon?
Great. How are you?
Doing great. I cannot believe we're already on day 96 of this case. I feel like there's been a new update every week.
Oh yeah, it's been pretty interesting to see the case evolve, from when it was first announced that the charges were being charged. But let's provide our viewers with a little bit of context. Let's start on why all of this is even happening.
Yeah, so I think, maybe starting with one of the most recent controversies, right? Earlier this week, Young Thug's attorney, Brian Steele, filed a motion to have the judge in this case removed over alleged misconduct. The motion accuses the court of being so biased against Young Thug and his defense, Brian Steele, that it broke multiple laws and that it also tried to use contempt penalties to also coerce the defense into breaking laws and violating ethics, right? So the motion was kind of wide in its scope, but ultimately the Judge Glanville, probably to no surprise to a lot of us who are watching this case, decided to reject that. So he said that the claims in the motion were insufficient. This all stems from a meeting that the judge had with prosecutors and a star witness in the trial last week, which I'm sure we'll get to throughout this conversation. But ultimately, the defense will probably appeal to a higher court to intervene in this. But we're actually just learning within the last hour that several members of Atlanta's legal societies are actually planning to file formal complaints with the Georgia Judicial Qualifications Commission. So a lot of things going on here, but the judge ultimately ruled on a motion in his own court that he would not be disqualified.
So we know that this trial has gone on for almost 100 days here. Day 96 is what we're on now.
Yeah.
Why is this trial so long? It seems like it's something new every day as well with this trial.
Yeah, it really does. And I think when you look at why this has been going on for so long, you have to understand what the case is about. It is about looking at organized crime and trying to prove that someone may have been responsible for organized crime, even if they did not directly do the acts of crimes themselves. So when you're looking at the evidence in this case, the state is bringing forth a lot of witnesses. In the beginning, they were trying to bring forth 500 witnesses, but the judge then said in April, hey, you need to pare this down. This needs to speed up. So the defense in April said they would bring 150 witnesses over the next 6 to 7 months. Now, it's important when you're thinking about this to keep in mind, too, the defense is going to get to come back at the end of all of this with their own witnesses if they want. Though the burden of proof rests with the state, the defense may have pieces of evidence or things that they want to go over. And one of the things as well is that there's been a lot of unexpected breaks, mishaps, and some kind of administrative delays that have contributed to this. But when you think about it, January of 2023 was when jury selection began. It took 10 months of jury selection. We heard opening statements November of 2023, and now we're already, 6, 7 months later, and we have not even gotten through half of the state's witness list. So this will likely continue into the rest of this year, but ultimately the prosecution has been told to kind of speed things up, and we're just watching to see how this is going to go along.
And we know you just mentioned there's been administrative delays. The judge was asked to recuse himself. And then there was a situation with his lawyer as well. I believe he was held in contempt, which is adding to the drama of this case. So, explain a little bit what happened with the lawyer.
Yeah, so taking a look, we're going to go back in time about 2 weeks because this contempt also led up to what we saw this week with that motion asking the judge to disqualify himself from the case. We're looking at a meeting that happened last Monday, right? So not this previous Monday of this week, but going back. After a lunch recess, Brian Steele, who's Young Thug's attorney, actually came up to the judge and revealed his knowledge of an ex parte meeting that happened in judges' chambers. It was between the judge, prosecutors, and the state's star witness in this case, Kenneth Copeland. And Brian Steele was upset that he wasn't a part of that meeting because, as the defense attorney, he wants to protect his client's constitutional rights, be present in that meeting, and he was upset he wasn't included. Judge Glanville then gets upset that Steele even found out about this meeting. He wants to know who told Glanville this meeting happened in judges' chambers. Steele wouldn't divulge his source or how he found out about this meeting to begin with. So then it was kind of a heated exchange, a bit of a back and forth. Court continued on through the rest of the day, and finally it ended that Monday with Judge Glanville holding Brian Steele in criminal contempt of court for not revealing his source. And then he was ordered to spend the next 10 weekends in jail, serving the next up to 20 days in jail. But ultimately, the Georgia Supreme Court intervened. Brian Steele actually filed an emergency motion for bond, and it asked for a few other things as well. But what you need to know here is that the higher court granted that bond. They're going to hear his case at a later date, so he's not having to serve jail time right now because that higher court intervened. But we were just watching that unfold throughout the week because that's, as we've watched through this case, was one of the more significant developments.
And Ariyl, I know you all over at Fox 5 Atlanta have been streaming this case in its entirety for the 96 days that it's been ongoing. So how can folks at home watch, what's kind of unraveling in this trial?
Absolutely, Bre, I think if those in Detroit are wanting to watch along with us here in Atlanta, you can go to our YouTube channel, Fox 5 Atlanta. We stream every single day that court's in session, and every single day you can just follow along. We have a lot of people tuning in with us, so it's a great way to get involved if you want to follow this case more closely.
All right, thanks so much, Ariyl.